Transfer Talk episode 10. 1 month left of the transfer window, so we are getting closer and closer to that early September deadline. We will have a live stream, as we always do, on deadline day to assess the full window, talking about where Leeds are and judge it. We're getting to that sticky bit of the window where we started off really strong, got a couple of targets in, and then we've seen a week where we've probably lost out on a couple of targets we would have liked. Carlos Espy was a very brief interest from Leeds United. Leeds has said they've not made a move for him. He signed for Real Madrid on Thursday evening. Rapid one there. Went in, paid the release clause, signed the contract, had him in a medical, had him in a jersey, and trained with them all within 6 hours start to start. Difference between a side that have pennies to spend and other sides that are trying to manage their pools of pennies to bring in multiple players. So, unfortunate one there. Then yesterday we got the final news on Julian Brandt. That's done and dusted. He is headed off to Ajax, where he signed a 3-year contract with them. Was said to really want to play in the Premier League, but clearly didn't fancy the level, and instead has opted to be a standout player in the Eredivisie instead. So that one's done and dusted. But we did get some information that came out from Graham Smyth, as well as Zinny Boswell in Sky Sports last night, to give us an update on where Leeds' transfer situation is. Starting point today, the best place to start is what is the overall picture for Leeds and what has been said, because everyone's asking about James Trafford as well. There's a lot of people online trying to muddy the water on this one a little bit, but we'll give you the exact status of where everything is. And this is what Zinny Boswell said this morning in Sky Sports News, and it lines up an awful lot with what Graham Smyth has also said. And it reads as follows: Leeds are considering alternative options after missing out on Julian Brandt to Ajax. This has been the case since they set off for their pre-season tour of the US, wary of the time it had taken for the 30-year-old to make a decision on his future. The plan this summer has always been to bring in players who improve the individual quality in the squad with a capacity to make the difference in the final third. It remains to be seen if Leeds will target at number 10 or a winger capable of playing inside now that Brandt is off the table. Now, Okafor is the only player in that mould of the current options capable of playing on the left. Leeds are closing in on club record deal for Manchester City's goalkeeper James Trafford, which is worth an initial £40 million plus add-ons. The English international's arrival is expected to pave the way for Lucas Perry to join Torino on an initial loan. There will be a need for another goalkeeper signing to provide cover for James Trafford after Carl Darlow chose to join Manchester United over extending his deal at Leeds, and as it stands, Alex Cairns has not played a senior game since 2004, the only other option. Central midfield remains a position Leeds are keen to add in, despite so far failing to reach an agreement with Southampton for Shay Charles. Leeds will not improve their third offer, but have left it on the table in case the Saints reconsider the position. Leeds are also looking at bringing in another striker to provide cover for Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Lucas Mecha, who both have patchy injury records. Finding a versatile defender in the mould of James Justin, who can play both left and right, is also on Leeds' list. In terms of outgoings, Perry is the closest to an exit, but that will likely have to wait until Trafford's mandated holiday after the World Cup is over or a number 2 arrives. Joe Piru and Willie Gnonto are the other players who are expected to move on as well this summer. Leeds had a strong start to the window by signing long-term target Harry Wilson on a free transfer to improve their wide attacking options, as well as moving swiftly to bring in Tariq Muharramovic for £34 million from Sassuolo as replacement for Pascal Struijk. Now, there's a couple of bits to read into that, and then looking at the players that Leeds are actively linked with. Looking for a fullback who can play left or right sided, so likely a 2-foot fullback in that situation. A striker as well, and then the James Trafford situation. He is on a mandated holiday after the World Cup. He's not due back to August 9th, so he can't come back and train until that date. That's the minimum, and it's mandated. So that's likely the situation we're looking at here with him. Similar situation to Harry Wilson, who was on holiday when the deal was agreed with Leeds, and you'll see him in a Leeds shirt when you see him in a Leeds shirt. Now, there are rumours that he could be back for a medical early next week and sign and then take another couple of days off his holiday before he joins up with the Leeds United squad. But there's no major issues here. Everyone's saying it's progressing as expected. No drama. A couple of people online trying to wind people up a little bit more than anything else, but there's no interest in Aston Villa in this. And all you've got to do if you see that report is go look at Aston Villa hashtags. There is nothing on Aston Villa's side reporting any interest in James Trafford. They are expected to keep hold of Emi Martinez. So that's where we are up to date. Let's get stuck into what the latest is on the players Leeds are being linked with. And the first one is Pavel Šulc. Right, so number 10 / attacking midfielder, can also play in the wide areas, playing at Olympique Lyonnais, 25 years of age, right-footed, 5'10" in height. So the status on Pavel Šulc right now has been labelled as talks or an inquiry, no public offer on the table. That's public. That doesn't say anything about private, and Leeds are not doing their business in public right now. So there's a bit more context in this, and there's a bit more deep diving needed, because his situation over the past 24 hours has escalated, which is the words of the French media. We've gone and had a look there. He is not currently training with Lyon right now, despite the fact that he was one of the first players back after the World Cup mandated break into pre-season. He last played for them in a friendly on July 15th against Servette and hasn't featured for them since. Now, at that time, it was labelled as a physical issue, so some form of a knock or maybe a bit of fatigue. But he's not expected to be in Lyon's squad for the Champions League qualifier on Tuesday night against Sparta Prague. Yeah, the French media have been putting out updates on this, and it's getting a bit more interested. Lyon Foot claim that his absence points to an exit soon, and say that he could right now be actively negotiating his exit from the club. Now, French reporter Foti Simio has also had his say on this, and he says Leeds are in concrete discussions with a move for Schulz, and Lyon want about 25 million euros, so again about 19.5 million pounds. Another report says that Aston Villa, Spurs and Nottingham Forest all have varying different levels of interest in him. For Voix Lyonnais, citing Le Progress, who are a legitimate regional newspaper, say that Schulz has a strong chance of missing Tuesday's game and is on the verge of a departure from the club. Now, if you want to put 2 and 2 together there, and probably get 6, but there does still appear to be a situation where Leeds have interest in Pavel Šulc. We know that he was, by Graham Smith, he was on a list of players Leeds liked, but hadn't actually made a move for. The verdict on this one seems there is real smoke around the potential exit of Pavel Šulc from Olympic Lyon. However, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to rock up at Leeds United, but it does feel a bit Leedsy that it's all very quiet about who he's negotiating with or if he's negotiating, but he's expected to leave. And the term that's being used is he's expected to leave very soon. That's one option for Leeds in that mould of Julian Brandt. There's a second one that we've all got a bit of PTSD about, and it's Igor Paixão. And yeah, we're doing this one again. Let's hope it's different than the last time. Left winger / number 10, right-footed, 5'6" in height, 26 years of age. Technically, plays in exactly the same position as Noah Okafor, but he can play as a central number 10. People are saying, why would we be going after another player in that position? Someone's got to get dropped. Leeds need depth, and Leeds don't look like they're going to play Willie Gnonto. And if Cindy Boswell's reports to be believed, he's likely to leave. So Leeds will need rotational options there as well. No, Okafor misses a couple of games a season, but Knox is only good for about 60 minutes of games. You want to rotate those players around. So you do want to have another option there. And if Farke does want to play a 3 behind the 1, then he's going to need number 10, and Paixao can't play in that. The status on this transfer link is labelled as interest. And again, it depends on what you're listening to right now. Story on this, we all have PTSD from this last season. He was expected to come to Leeds United. There was a lot of interest in him, a lot of positive noise on the Leeds side of it, and then he rocked up at Marseille. Now, a lot of people don't want to see him in a Leeds shirt now because he chose Marseille, but stubbornness is not a really good trait to have, especially when you're looking at bringing in quality players during a transfer window. He chose Marseille because Leeds were a newly promoted side to the Premier League, and Marseille could offer him European Champions League football. Probably as deep as that, and you can't really blame a player for doing that. Very good output while he was at Feyenoord. Then he joined Marseille. Good season last year in his first year there. Brazilian winger, attacker, would be a very interesting player for Leeds to bring in. Now, Graham Smith yesterday in the YP said that Leeds had Paixao back on their radar, and outlets in France have jumped all over this and are just putting out tons of stuff, but we'll try and cut through the noise as much as we can. This is what Graham Smith said about it yesterday in his tweet. Leeds United have been evaluating other attacking options, particularly since Brandt didn't sign prior to the US tour. They have several, and among the number is Igor Paixão. So that quote lines up directly with Cindy Boswell. That's likely coming out from the club. And Paixão is back on the radar. And here we go again. Now, Football Club de Marseille's own report on this, and being translated from French, explains that there is no offer on the table, no negotiations, and no clarity over Paixao's situations. Leeds are said to have several options. Now, last week, Leeds Live said the Leeds United were keeping their eyes open on market opportunities, and that's the term that Leeds seem to use for these bigger stretch targets. They see some sell-on value in the future in, or an extreme player that they might just get that they more often than not wouldn't get. And Leeds described Paixao last summer as a market opportunity. So maybe there's something in that. But it isn't much clearer than what's been put out there already right now. There's no negotiations at least being confirmed publicly by agents or anything else. Given the information that leaked out last year, if there is to be some noise around this, then it'll likely come out. But where this one is, and if this one has legs for me, is this can't drag on like last year. We can't get into these long-running dramas and sagas with every single player. The ones we have got into long sagas with haven't necessarily worked out in our favour. And the parties involved in this all already know each other. Paixao's team negotiated with Leeds last year, so they all know each other. Leeds have already done the initial sales pitch to Paixao's team, so that doesn't need to be done again. Leeds have survived in Premier League, got to an FA Cup semi-final, have signed good players this summer again. So it's all there on paper. This should just be a case of, you know the deal. Do you want to come or not? What do you want in terms of money? Can we make that happen? What do Marseille want? They're in financial trouble. Can we get this deal done? And just get it done as quick as they can. If it drags on, or if there's any messing around, walk out. Walk away. And that's where this is for me. Would you take him? 100% you take him. You don't say no to quality players. Same with Julian Brandt when I said, you wait as long as you have to wait until you find out one way or the other. If Paixao's back on the market and you can get him, you want a Rafinha-esque type player, there you go. You're not going to say no to him. As I did see one tweet, and if it is you watching this, let me know in the comments. I don't want to see him in a Leeds United shirt unless he signs, in which case, fantastic. Which is exactly where we probably all stand on this. So that's the Igor Paixão. Let's move on. So let's talk about the fullback cover now, and a player that does tick that box of what Zinny Boswell said about a left footer who can play on the right hand side is Jacques Ekomié. He's a left back at Angers. 22 years of age, left footer, 5'10" in height, 32 games played last season, and is from Gabon. Now, interesting on him because SofaScore lists him as a left footer, FotMob lists him as a right footer, Transfermarkt lists him as both left and right footer. So maybe he does tick that box of somebody who can play on both sides. However, he is primarily a left back. Status on this one is he's labelled as being an option for Leeds United, or again a player they admire, have interest in, but not a huge amount more detail than that. There's very little information on this link. It's very tight. And when you look at the clubs that are linked with him, I've had a look around the different outlets of each side of the media on this. Sunderland seem to be the side that are being the strongestly linked with him and the most likely one to make a move for him. The detail on this, he is seen as a young, affordable option. Now, Jadon Leno is 18 years of age. People have seen him in pre-season and want him to be the backup to Gabby Gudmundsson. That's unlikely this season. Bringing in a player that sits between the two of them in age groups gives Leeds options. It means that if they get an offer in a couple of years' time for Gabby Gudmundsson, they can sell him on for a profit. Someone like Ekomie becomes the first choice, and then Jadon Leno moves up and becomes his deputy. And again, you can move them all down the conveyor belt over time. Now, he's labelled as a physically powerful left back, good ball carrier, strong in tackles as well. And he is labelled again as being a good understudy for someone like Gabby Gudmundsson. Now, Leeds are looking for exactly that model of player in that position right now. And very interestingly, when it comes to a Leeds checklist, he's got 12 months left on his existing contract. About €9 million, so 7.5, 7-ish million pounds, thereabouts, will be there. But the main clubs being linked to him are Besiktas, Sunderland and Hamburg. Leeds mentioned as an option, nothing more than that, at least right now. Move on. So let's talk about strikers now. Nicolò Tresoldi popped up again yesterday. Striker, Club Brugge, 6'1" in height and 21 years of age. A really talented young striker. The status on his transfer is labelled as multi-club interest. Players pushing for a move. Club are not so keen to sell him, but if he does go, they've got a number in mind. Falling very much into that. Every single player has a price tag. Now, the report on this came from 442.com in Germany yesterday. A few more people have jumped on the bandwagon with this. Basically, this came from Soren Munt, is the journalist who put this report out. Leeds, Manchester United, Chelsea and Arsenal were all the English clubs labelled as interested in him. AS Roma as well. And AS Roma have had a €35 million, again 29.5 million pounds bid rejected for him. Bruges want between 35 and €40 million. So again, 29-ish million pounds towards 34, 33 million pounds. Thereabouts, ballpark figures. The detail on this, in the last 24 hours, this has shifted away from Leeds United. Manchester United are believed to be the front runners, have stepped up their interest and are labelled as having concrete talks with the players' representatives. They are believed to be going all out to get this one done. He is likely to move from Bruges, but it doesn't appear that he's likely to head to Leeds United. No Leeds approach, player of interest, possible inquiry, someone they like, admire, but nothing more than that. So it does appear that Leeds are not in the race unless Manchester United decide to go elsewhere, and then it might change. But that's where the update on that one is. Move on. And back into that central defensive midfield one. Again, as Zinny Boswell pointed out, Leeds are looking for a certain mould of player in there. And we mentioned this guy yesterday, Amadou Kone, central defensive midfielder playing at Lyon SC in Saudi Arabia, 21 years of age, left-footed, 5'9" in height. Status on this one is similar to Tresoldi, multi-club interest, but he is a player that Leeds looked at signing last year and might be trying to move again. 4 players keen to move out of the Saudi Pro League this summer. Santi Auna was the journalist and the source on this who broke the story initially. He's the same journalist who broke the story on Pavel Šulc, along with Sebastian Dennis. So there is some credibility on this. Leeds are labelled as closely monitoring the situation, but one report says there is substantial interest from Leeds United, but they're not alone in this. Now, Hull City are believed to be the club that are the keenest to try and get a move done for Kone, but their attempt, at least, has been described as very difficult task of getting it done. Leeds and several other European clubs are labelled as a more likely destination should they decide to make the move. Hull are still likely to make a bid according to reports. They're still got a chance to arm. This is one of their stretch targets. Neom say that no formal offer has been put in for the player just yet. No talks ongoing, but again, depending on who's involved in this, they might want to be keeping the information as quiet as they can. All sides that are interested in him are believed, and this is in inverted commas, assessing the conditions required for the player. So the translation, have made inquiries, have got the numbers, and are seeing if the maths will work for them. Very combative young midfielder, mobile, gets around a huge amount of distance. You can see his heat map from last season there. He does cover an awful lot of ground. Very much a player that would fit a mold of a midfield that Daniel Farke would like. Can play number 6, primarily number 6, but can also do the box-to-box positions. And the report on this says, genuine 4-club interest in the player. Leeds have a history of liking him. Hull are the most active in this movement right now. We'll see where it goes if Leeds fancy this one. And again, wouldn't be a massively expensive one, probably around 15, 16 million pounds if they could get him done. So it would be an interesting one. Definitely cheaper than Shea Charles. Doesn't have the height that Shea Charles had, but maybe the ground physicality stuff. His ground dual work is very good as well. So an interesting one. So we're back into shortlist territory. That's where we are right now with all of this again. There are a couple of interesting ones. The interesting, again, language from Zinny Boswell and Graham is that Leeds moved on from Julian Brandt pretty much just before the US tour, so over a week ago. They should be relatively far down the line, at least in trying to identify who is going to be the next player they move from and what interest level they have in them. Have they put formal approaches? Have they sussed out the players' personal terms as well? And talk to the representatives and see where they are there. So it does feel like, although it's quiet right now, and we always say it, when Leeds are quiet, they're busy. That's good. We'll see where it lands, but it does appear like you've got a month left. They probably still need 4 players. They brought in 2, so you're still looking at 6, maybe 7 players. Exits as well would probably be needed now to try and fund some of these as well, because Brandt on a free would have saved you a huge amount of money. So you might need to sacrifice someone along the way here. And again, if it's Pirro and Nanto, the sooner you can get the money in for them. I don't want to see Willie Nanto go. I don't. I like Willie Nanto, but he wants to play more football and get into the Italian national side, as he said this week as well. So yeah, look, we'll see. We're in shortlist territory. We'll keep an eye on these over the course of the week and see where we go. Massive thanks as always for supporting the channel. If you want to stick a like on the video on your way out the door, and if you haven't subscribing for daily Leeds United news as well as podcasts and deep dives as well as transfer wrap-ups. And when we get into the start of the season, match day reviews as well as previews. Check all that out over the coming months. Got some news coming around August 10th on the audio side of our platform and where we could be moving to. Keep an eye out for that as well. I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. See ya. Bye.